In the first lesson of this course on happiness, I want to introduce you to the power of the mind and teach you the foundation of controlling your thoughts and emotions rather than letting them control you. It's important to know that we are not helplessly at the mercy of our thoughts and emotions. We have the power in this relationship. These are the subjects we'll go over: the power of thought, cognitive behavioral therapy, self-awareness, common distorted thinking, restructuring our thinking, and Socratic questioning. This can all sound intimidating, but stick with me and I'll explain things in a language I hope anyone can understand. Like with all the subjects, feel free to jump ahead if you already know the information. Here, I would like to mention the sponsor of the video, the Intro Juicer app. Intro Juicer is the place where all of us can meet together and create the community of friendship, support, and love that brought us here. Intro Juicer is the hub for relationships where you can find anyone for anything. The link is in the description. Like I was saying before, happiness is something we can cultivate. Just like working a muscle and transforming our body, we can work our mind and beliefs and transform our thoughts and emotions. Thoughts can be powerful things, but most of the time, that's not the case. It was found some time ago that on average we have about 80,000 thoughts per day. A lot comes and goes, and we are not even aware. There is a well-established theory in psychology that thoughts drive emotion. This started with Aaron Beck, one of the leading pioneers of cognitive therapy. There is also a massive evidence which supports this. However, thoughts themselves are quite benign or innocuous. A lot of them just come and go, and we are not even aware. For example, try this. Think about the world ending tomorrow. Imagine if tomorrow the world ended and all the consequences of that. It's horrible, right? But chances are it didn't actually affect you much emotionally because it was just a thought. It had no weight to it. You knew it was just a fictional scenario. But then there are other thoughts which can have a great effect on you. For example, if you had the thought that you are not loved, or that you are a failure in life, or you are filled with character flaws. Now, if you believe one of these is true, chances are these would affect you much more because they have a lot more weight to them. They have a nugget of truth underneath, or at least truth as you see it. There is something deeper, which influences the nature of our thoughts and is the real culprit behind emotion. Actually, it's not thoughts themselves which bring emotion, but rather underlying belief. Since we are born, every one of us becomes a kind of scientist trying to understand how the world works. To do this, we create what psychology calls schemas and beliefs. Schemas are cognitive frameworks that organize and interpret information about the world. For example, when we see that thing with 4 legs, fur, and dangly ears barking across the street, we know it is a dog. Beliefs are similar but reflect our attitudes, opinions, or assumptions about reality. For example, one person might think dogs are nice and friendly and love to be pat or scratched behind the ear, while another person might think dogs are mean, scary, and frequently bite strangers. From babies, we look at the world and try to understand what everything is, how it works, and what effect it will have on our lives. The problem with this is that we often get it wrong, or somewhere in there get a belief that causes us pain later in life. I want to introduce you to a very dominant and well-established area of psychology, CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. According to this theory, much of our emotions are the byproduct of our beliefs. So emotions come about like this. First comes an event or situation, then it goes through our own mental filter, which are our schemas and beliefs. It then triggers an emotion and a consequent behavior. The ABCD model is a cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, technique that helps individuals understand and manage their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This system was created in English, so might not work as well in other languages, but here's what each letter stands for. A is for antecedent or activating event. This is the event or situation that triggers the thought process. B is for beliefs. These are the thoughts or perceptions that we have about the event at A. They can be rational, based on facts, or irrational, based on false assumptions. C is for consequences. These are the emotional and behavioral responses to our beliefs. D is for disputing irrational beliefs. This is the process of challenging irrational beliefs and replacing them with rational ones. The ABCD model is a tool used in CBT to help individuals identify and challenge their irrational beliefs, leading to more positive emotional responses and behaviors. For example, let's say you go to work and get yelled at by your boss. That's the A activating event, or antecedent. Now, underneath it all, you don't have great confidence in your ability. That's your belief about yourself, or the B. You think to yourself what a failure you are, and here is the proof. Next comes the C, which is consequences. It stirs up emotions of sadness and hopelessness. And that's the reason you avoid trying new things, give up easily, or isolate yourself from others. This can create a vicious cycle that reinforces your negative beliefs. What you believe, you make real. But what if you could challenge that belief and replace it with a more realistic and positive one? Like, I have strengths and weaknesses, and I can learn from my mistakes. That's the D in the equation and stands for disputing irrational or unhealthy beliefs. When correcting unhealthy beliefs, you might feel more confident, motivated, or optimistic, and you might try new things, persist in the face of difficulties, or seek support from others. This can create a virtuous cycle that reinforces your positive thoughts and makes you feel better. This is what CBT can help you do. CBT can help you break the cycle of negative thinking and create a new cycle of positive thinking. CBT can help you cope with various mental and physical health challenges, such as depression, anxiety, stress, insomnia, and more. And it is our first tool to find happiness and a great one to have as a basis in our tool belt. CBT is like a weapon against negative, irrational, and unhealthy thinking, which leads almost always to sadness. In this course, you will learn how to use these skills through various exercises, examples, and assignments. By the end of this course, you will have a better understanding of yourself and your thoughts, and you will have a toolkit of strategies to help you control your thoughts and become more happy. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and how they affect each other and your well-being. Self-awareness is important because it helps you to understand yourself better, to recognize your triggers and patterns, and any beliefs you might have that cause you distress or pain. Self-awareness is not always easy to achieve, especially when we are used to ignoring, avoiding, or suppressing our thoughts and feelings. Sometimes, we may not even be aware of what we are thinking or feeling or why we are acting in certain ways. Here comes something I like to refer to as a witch hunt, where the witch is the unhealthy belief you have sometimes deeply buried down there in your psyche. Some of us might know exactly why we are sad. For others, it can be a challenge to even know the root cause. This is where going on a witch hunt is necessary. One of the best times to go on your witch hunt is when we actually feel that sadness. You might be going on with your day, and suddenly you realize your mood has dropped and you're not sure why. Now it's time to backtrack. Did something happen recently which triggered a thought? What was that thought? It might take a few tries to be able to catch yourself here, so be vigilant. Chances are that if it's the kind of thought that is an actual problem, it's going to rear its ugly head frequently and over months at a time. If it doesn't cause persistent problems, then it's likely not much of an issue. CBT teaches us to practice self-awareness regularly, using various tools and techniques. Some of these tools and techniques are mindfulness. This is the practice of paying attention to the present moment with curiosity and openness, without judgment or criticism. Mindfulness helps us to notice our thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they arise, without getting attached to them or reacting to them impulsively. Mindfulness also helps us to calm our mind and body and to cope with stress and negative emotions. We'll go further into this later in the course. Journaling. This is the practice of writing down your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, either on paper or electronically. Journaling helps us to express ourselves, to reflect on our situation, to gain insight and perspective, and to track our progress and challenges. Feedback. This is the practice of seeking and receiving information from others, such as friends, family, or professionals, about how they perceive us and our behavior. Feedback helps us to learn from others, correct our blind spots, validate our strengths, and improve our relationships. In this course, you will have the opportunity to try some of these tools and techniques and to see how they can enhance your self-awareness. Here I want to introduce you to a simple exercise. I want you to write down 3 words that describe how you feel right now. It can be any emotion, positive or negative, such as happy, sad, angry, or bored. Just write down the first 3 words that come to your mind. Done? Great. Now look at the words you wrote down and ask yourself these questions. What made me feel this way? How does this emotion affect my body, my thoughts, and my actions? Is this emotion helpful or unhelpful for me right now? What can I do to cope with this emotion or to change it if I want to? Take a few minutes to think about these questions and write down your answers. You don't have to share them with anyone unless you want to. This is just for your own benefit. This exercise is an example of how you can practice self-awareness by paying attention to your emotions and by exploring their causes and consequences. By doing this exercise regularly, you will be able to increase your emotional intelligence and manage your emotions more effectively. In the next lesson, we will learn about another aspect of self-awareness, cognitive restructuring. This is the process of identifying and challenging your negative or distorted thoughts and replacing them with more objective, realistic, and positive thoughts. Cognitive restructuring is the process of identifying and challenging your negative or distorted thoughts and beliefs and replacing them with more objective, realistic, and positive ones. Cognitive restructuring is important because it helps you to change the way you think about yourself, others, and the world, and to improve your mood and behavior. But what are negative or distorted thoughts, and how can we identify and challenge them? Negative or distorted thoughts are also called cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are irrational or exaggerated beliefs that are not based on facts or evidence, but on assumptions, interpretations, or emotions. Cognitive distortions can make us see things in a negative or distorted way and cause us to feel unhappy, anxious, angry, or hopeless. There are many types of cognitive distortions, but some of the most common ones are all or nothing thinking. This is when you see things in black and white terms without any shades of gray. For example, if I don't get an A on this test, I'm a failure. Overgeneralization. This is when you draw a general conclusion from a single event or piece of evidence. For example, I got rejected by one person, so nobody will ever love me. Mental filter. This is when you focus on the negative aspects of a situation and ignore the positive ones. For example, I made a mistake on one question, so I ruined the whole presentation. Disqualifying the positive. This is when you reject or minimize positive experiences or feedback and think that they don't count or matter. For example, they only said I did a good job because they felt sorry for me. Jumping to conclusions. This is when you make a negative assumption or prediction without sufficient evidence or facts. For example, they didn't reply to my message, so they must hate me. Magnification or minimization. This is when you exaggerate the importance or severity of a negative event or outcome, or downplay the importance or significance of a positive event or outcome. For example, I forgot to say thank you, so I'm a terrible person. Or, I won the lottery, but it's not a big deal. Emotional reasoning. This is when you think that your feelings are facts and that they reflect reality. For example, I feel stupid, so I must be stupid. Should statements. This is when you use words like should, must, have to, or ought to impose unrealistic or rigid expectations or rules on yourself or others. For example, I should always be perfect, or they should always agree with me. Labeling. This is when you assign a negative or global label to yourself or others based on a single event or characteristic. For example, I'm a loser, or they're a jerk. Personalization. This is when you take things personally, or blame yourself for things that are not your fault or responsibility. For example, it's my fault that they broke up, or they're angry because of me. These are just some examples of cognitive distortions, but there are many more. Cognitive distortions can affect anyone, and sometimes they may seem true or reasonable. However, they are not helpful or accurate, and they can cause us to feel and act in ways that are not in our best interest. That's why we need to learn how to identify and challenge them, and to replace them with more balanced and realistic thoughts. How can we do that? There are many techniques that can help us with cognitive restructuring, but one of the most effective ones is called Socratic questioning. Socratic questioning is a method of asking yourself or others questions that help to examine the validity, logic, and evidence of a thought or belief. Socratic questioning can help us to uncover the flaws and gaps in our thinking and to discover alternative and more positive ways of thinking. Socratic questioning involves asking yourself questions such as, what is the evidence for and against my thought? Is there another way of looking at this situation? What is the worst that could happen and how likely is it? What is the best that could happen and how likely is it? What is the most realistic outcome and how can I cope with it? What are the advantages and disadvantages of thinking this way? What would I say to a friend who had this thought? What would a friend say to me if I shared this thought with them? How will I feel and act if I keep thinking this way? How will I feel and act if I change my thinking? By asking yourself these questions, you can challenge your cognitive distortions and find more rational, realistic, and positive thoughts that can improve your mood and behavior. In this course, you will have the opportunity to practice cognitive restructuring using Socratic questioning and to see how it can help you control your thoughts and become more happy. But before we move on, I want you to do another simple exercise. Think of a recent situation that made you feel unhappy, anxious, angry, or hopeless. It can be anything, big or small, that bothered or upset you. Then, write down the negative or distorted thoughts that you had about that situation. It can be one of the cognitive distortions that we discussed, or another type of negative or irrational thought. Just write down the first thought that comes to your mind. Done? Great. Now look at the thought you wrote down and ask yourself these questions. Is this thought true or false? How do I know that this thought is true or false? What is the evidence for and against this thought? Is there another way of looking at this situation? How can I restate this thought in a more objective, realistic, and positive way? Take a few minutes to think about these questions and write down your answers. You don't have to share them with anyone unless you want to. This is just for your own benefit. This exercise is an example of how you can practice cognitive restructuring using Socratic questioning by identifying and challenging your negative or distorted thoughts and beliefs, and by replacing them with more balanced and realistic ones. By doing this exercise regularly, you will be able to change the way you think about yourself, others, and the world, and improve your mood and behavior. In the next lesson, we will look a bit deeper into how to change your thoughts and beliefs. This will help you to control your thoughts and to become more happy. Are you ready to continue your journey of happiness? If so, I'll see you in the next lesson.